Feedback. Another important way of focusing on form in second language acquisition classrooms is through negative feedback. Now, what do we mean by negative feedback? By negative feedback, we mean feedback from the teacher or by a peer, which tells the learner that a certain form of language that the learner is using is not acceptable. So the interesting thing to remember over here that unlike other strategies of focus on form, negative feedback takes place on the spot. It is almost in reaction or in response to what the students say. It is not preemptive. You don't plan to this feedback. That is, as a teacher, you don't think, if the learners use this specific form, I'll say that. But it has to be done then and there. And the main essence of the negative feedback is to let the learner know that the form of language the learner is using is not correct. So negative feedback is essentially on the spot, right there in the classroom. It is spontaneous, it is unplanned, and it plays no role in task design. There are several techniques that have been suggested for giving negative feedback. Over here, we will only talk about two, actually. So one way to give feedback is implicit. That is, to give feedback in such a way that it is non-obtrusive, that the learner does not feel rejected, and you give the feedback in a way that is not very clear-cut. And the other way to give the feedback is to give the feedback in a more clear way, and just to tell the learner that this is incorrect. First of all, we will talk about implicit feedback, that is negative feedback that is sort of buffered by a certain strategy. Now, one of the strategies that buffers the negative feedback and makes it sort of hidden and unobtrusive is recast. What are recasts? Recasts are the reformulation of a language form by the teacher if the student or the learner has not uttered the language correctly. So if the learner says something like, I go tomorrow, I going tomorrow. So as a teacher, I'll say, you are going tomorrow, or I'm going tomorrow. So I repeat what the learner has said with the changing or not changing of the pronoun to remind the learner that the way he or she is saying something is not acceptable and is incorrect. This is an attractive option because it does not disrupt the communication flow. It does not discourage the learner a lot, and it also somehow contributes to the knowledge of the learner. So next time when the learner speaks to somebody, telling them about his or her plan of going the next day, it is quite likely that the learner might use the corrected form or the recasted form by the teacher, because he or she has realized that the original formulation of the utterance led to miscommunication. The other way to give feedback is explicit feedback. In Pakistani context, more often than not, this is exactly what we do. Sometimes we just let the students go and give no full feedback, and at other times we just tell the learners that what they are saying is incorrect and you need to say it not this way but that way. So what we are doing now in this type of feedback is that we are using a meta language. We are giving meta linguistic cues, either suggesting cues, or we are just talking about the language. This is not how you say it like this. When you are not using the language, but you are actually talking about a certain structure, we say this is meta talk or meta language. When we do that, at that moment, the communication is disrupted. And depending on the context, someone might be offended or might not be offended.